Indie Beacon Radio with the host, B. Alan Bourgeois.
Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Hi, and welcome to Indie Beacon Radio. This is your host, B. Alan Bourgeois, and I am with Deborah Chelette-Wilson, who is a professional trauma counselor. Welcome, Deborah.
Well, I'm glad to be here this morning, bright and early.
So let's start off with, what is a professional trauma counselor?
Well, I was licensed in the state of Texas many years ago as a licensed professional counselor, and I've specialized in working with people who have experienced trauma.
Now, trauma can be a lot of things, correct?
Correct. A lot of times people think it is just abuse or like military people who've been in war zones and that kind of thing. But what I've come to understand from the research I've done over the years is that children can be traumatized inadvertently by some of the parenting practices we have in our country, and also some of the lack of child developmental needs have gone unknown for a long time. So we judge children's behavior based on previous information, but now we know, like, for example, the terrible twos. They're actually the dysregulated twos. A 2-year-old cannot regulate their emotions, so they freak out, because until a child is 36 months of age, they don't have the brain development to be able to learn how to self-regulate. So before then, they need an adult to help them calm down. Otherwise, you have the terrible twos. And when I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, we've misunderstood the 2-year-olds. They can't really regulate themselves. And then it made me think about when I was that age and I had temper tantrums. It really wasn't a temper tantrum. It's just I couldn't handle what was happening to me emotionally. So, I fell on the floor.
Almost as bad as a teenager. I realize what I'm going to ask, it may not really apply, but I'm kind of curious if it does. You had mentioned just a moment ago about our parenting maybe being a fact of how we scar children or have that trauma. So I'm going to use this as a very simple example, but the drive to have our children get the A's in schools and stuff, we mean well, but is that something that can create that trauma that you're referring to?
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say yes, because the research is showing, and the children that I've worked with from 2 years old to 104 have been my clients over the years. And so I feel like I've kind of took that course development across the lifespan real seriously. But when I work with teenagers, what I'm finding out is teenagers are extremely stressed out. And of course, if you look at the statistics, the incidence of suicide in teenagers and young adults has escalated over the last 30 years. And we are putting a lot of pressure on children to get grades, to get in the right kind of school, and et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that I found, because I did work in a high school with students in a dropout prevention program, and what I learned there was a lot of pressure put on kids to go to college. And what was not given them as an alternative was like a 2-year program or just going to, well, we don't have those, I guess, anymore, vocational education. Now they're technical colleges. But if you look at the history in the world of work, we really need more people that need technical skills than what we need is 4 and 6 and 8 year degreed people. If you look at the world of work in the pie chart, there's just lots of opportunities for kids. And I think that's getting lost in the shuffle, and kids are, thinking they've got to go be something, that their parents are pushing on them, instead of finding out, is that really going to work work for them. And so,
And I'm sure
Nice.
it's not just the parents, but I mean, our social media is pushing, to be rich and famous and all this other stuff. But I mean, we could go on for a whole hour on that, but we won't.
right.
Um,
Well, one of the things that I've learned is to help people redefine what success is for them, no matter what age they are, by basing it on their values and what's important to them instead of what society and the media is saying.
in that
Because
case,
that's
I'll
a
be a
lot,
great case study for you.
yeah, that's a lot more empowering, really, than listening to all these different voices and not being able to hear your own.
Yes. So with all of this that you've done and everything you've learned, you've written some books, and I assume that's what got you into the writing. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, first I had to find my own voice. And then once I found it, I can't shut up, whether it's verbally or in writing.
Well, you've got a good collection already started. So let's start with, I believe, what was your first one, Sanctuary Found? Tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, Sanctuary Found is, of course, it won an award, first place in the Texas Authors for Women's Fiction, and it's based on the story of a woman who has experienced not only childhood trauma, but is in a relationship, in a marriage that was abusive, and her struggle to get out of it, to begin to make sense of her life, to find her own voice. And of course, I threw in a little murder mystery in there just to make it interesting. Because I want, a lot of times we hear a lot of things, like you say, on the media, and it leaves out, I think, the humanness of our struggles. And so you can look at a lot of statistics, but that kind of dehumanizes the experience of the person. And so I wanted to lend that to giving people an opportunity to get a sense of what that struggle is like for a woman when she confronts that she's been married a man who is abusive, and it's actually starts killing her soul. And the struggle to get out of that isn't just a light thing.
So that was a good use of fiction with that non-fictional aspect and reality involved and stuff.
Yes.
But you have a nonfiction book, which I love the title. It's called Your Brain and Heart Want to Talk to You. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yes. Well, that one, that one came about because of work that I'd done with children, and realizing how, going back to the parenting paradigm, that how children are judged on their behavior, that we look at behavior as the problem. And so we punish the behavior, or we give consequences. Anyway, we look at the behavior and then we try to stop the behavior, which by the time parents get to me and bring their kids to me, they've said, nothing seems to work. We've tried everything. But they haven't tried a new understanding based on the research from the brain, of course, and the heart. And that's what I put in that book. It's based on actually puppets that I've used to explain different parts of the brain to children and adults and to parents, to help them understand that what's driving that behavior. Because if you don't get to what's driving the behavior, it may stop for a while, but it'll come back, and sometimes with a vengeance. And so that's, the book looks like it may be for children, but it's really, I wrote it because I want adults to begin to understand children better. And sometimes I come across sounding like, oh, you just let the kids do whatever they want, but that's not it. It's, you've got to understand where they're coming from, because as an adult, you always have the final say. But if you think that the child is behaving, like, for example, back to that 2-year-old, just because they're wanting to have their way and that's it, then you're missing that they can't regulate themselves emotionally when they can't have their way, and they need you to help them learn how to do that. So we need to be more, to me, more guiding our children than the punishment, because I don't see how that the punishment has made things get any better in our society. But I know when I work with parents and they have a new understanding of their child, it not only helps the child feel heard and seen, but it starts creating a healthier relationship between the parent and the child. It's tough work, but it's really worth it.
Yes, and you mentioned the fact of what we go through as children can come out later in time, which one therapist had once told me it's like replaying tapes that we just can't erase. And we have to learn how to erase those tapes from our childhood to grow to become better. Is that about right?
Well, I think that's how we've talked about it before. But since I've done so much research on neuroscience and from the Heart Math Institute, there's so much biology to it. It's like neurophysiologically in our body. And if you don't get to the body and you just try to deal with the head, it's not going to work long term and be sustainable. You've really got to get at the level of understanding how we're designed as human beings and the power of relationships. I think that's something that's so missing in our world today, is people don't realize how, especially with children and young children, how powerful they are in the lives of children. We think because they misbehave, it's because they're not paying attention. But that isn't it. They're paying attention. They're paying attention to everything. And they want to make it with adults. They don't want to do things, that upset an adult. But then out of that fear of upsetting adult, then they get dysregulated in their nervous system and they mess up. And it's kind of like a vicious cycle until people begin to understand, it's kind of like the iceberg. The behavior is like the tip of the iceberg. What's driving the behavior is what's underneath, which is the bigger piece. And that's what I think we keep missing.
And this is a perfect spot for us to stop, let our sponsors do their thing, because we'll be talking about your new book coming out, and we'll be right back.
The 5th Annual Authors Marketing Event is coming to Granbury, Texas, July 24th through the 27th. Join us and learn from the professionals how to properly market and sell yourself and your books. Go to ame.authorsmarketingguild.com for all the details. That's ame.authorsmarketingguild.com.
I'm Rox Berkey.
And I'm Charles Brakefield. We're award-winning co-authors, Brakefield and Berkey, of the Enigma book series. There are 10 books in the series, with book number 11 planned for release in January 2020.
Each story has a central technology focus ranging from identity theft to cryptocurrency and now AI wars. These adult techno thrillers pit cyber good guys against cyber thugs across the darknet.
In our world, technology is today's weapon of choice. You can enjoy ebook format, paper, or Audible. We want your feedback.
Until the next story, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, hello there, my friends. My name is Randy James, independent voiceover producer in the Dallas, Texas area, available to write and record a 30-second commercial, much like the one you're hearing right now. It's a great way to help increase awareness and exposure to your book title. It's easy to do. Simply call me and we'll brainstorm on a few ideas, and in a few hours, I'll whip something up and send you a digital file ready to use. Remember, call or text me, Randy James, at 214-762-1942.
Join Texas Authors on May 30th in Seguin, Texas for the first Texas Authors Only Book Festival celebrating Texas Authors and Writers Month. Learn more about this fun family event at lonestar.bookfestival.network. That's lonestar.bookfestival.network, and join us at the Seguin Events Complex on May 30th.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
And welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. This is your host, B. Alan Bourgeois, and I have with us Deborah Chelette-Wilson, who is a trauma counselor and has written several books, both fiction and nonfiction. And she has a new book with her, which I believe is a play on words. It's called Alligator Bites. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So the play on the words is bites. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's also a play on alligator, because this is the little alligator, alley and gator, bites, B-Y-T-E-S. What I've written is in here is it has illustrations and also little sayings that I say that my clients and my friends have said, you need to write that down. And I said, okay. So I did. And so I put this little book together. Also, it's play on words, bites, B-Y-T-E-S, is because it's little bites of information. And one of the things my clients say is sometimes when I point something out to them, they kind of go, ooh, that's like a little bite. So it's kind of also a bite and a bite.
Yes, those little bites we don't want to have, but bits and bites of wisdom, as they say.
Right.
So with your counseling and your friends telling you these are things you need to write down, how long did this book take you to pull together?
Well, it's probably years. I had to go back through and kind of, as I write little things down on pieces of paper, and then I got to try to find all those little pieces of paper, my little sticky notes. And so I went through, things that I've written down over the years, and I keep finding more little things that I've written down, because as a writer, I'm always writing stuff down. I'll hear something and it kind of triggers a thought, and I'm going, oh, well, that's kind of like this, and then I'll write something down. And so I'm rediscovering a lot of things. I have all kinds of files of stuff. So this is my first one.
Yeah, so it sounds like a second one's going to be coming out not too long from now.
Well, they keep telling me to write one about the masculine and feminine, not necessarily male and female, but the masculine and feminine aspects that we each have within us. Actually, that's what this butterfly represents that I did a painting of. You can't really see it, but it represents the masculine and feminine within each human being. And in the center is a space. And when we integrate those, we live in this space of wholeness. So anyway, that's kind of where that's at right
And sadly, too many of us don't live in that space, but
right.
yeah, that's another long conversation.
Well, I've along with two other people, we've started the School of Soul, SOS for short. And what that stands for, years ago, the SOS actually meant save our soul. And we feel like there isn't enough soulfulness in the world. So we're developing a curriculum actually to help people heal trauma so that then they can become more soulful, because our traumas interfere in our ability to be a whole human being, because we've split off so many different aspects of ourselves.
So that brings up a good question, because you're constantly writing and stuff. It sounds like there might be another book coming out from that aspect.
Well, it could be. It may be many books, because it's a really, the more that we get into it, the more it's like, well, now, okay, so what is the soul, and how would you know if you're living that way? And we've got all these questions. So I would say maybe every question is going to be another book, or at least a class or a workshop or a retreat or something.
Yeah, as you were talking, it sounded like you had a little pamphlet that also went with the training material that was for a class, and I mean multiple things that could be going on there. So it'd be
right.
interesting.
So yeah, so it's in the beginning. We my two co-founders, Ann Riddell, I think you know her, and Kathy McCommon. We just recently had our retreat, our very first soulful retreat, to put together our mission and our purpose and vision and those kinds of things. So we birthed the baby. Now we've got to start nurturing it.
Yes. Put all of that education that you've learned from years of being a therapist and helping create that. And that should be quite an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
You mentioned you had painted this butterfly. Did you do the illustrations in your book, The Alligator Bites?
No, actually, I have an illustrator I've used. I think we figured out it may have been for the last 10 years. So his name's Mark Trotter, and he does my illustrations.
Okay.
And he does a really good job. I'm very, very pleased with what we came up with.
So out of curiosity, because I know you are a painter, I've seen some of your work, is this part of your therapy that you do for yourself, or is this just something you enjoy doing?
It started out actually years ago, and when I was doing my own therapy, I made drawings, because sometimes it's difficult to find words. And what I've understood from the neuroscience research that I've done, it's like we experience things first kind of at the level of our body. And then as we process that, we're able to put it into words. So drawing is a good way of doing that when you can't figure out what to say. So I did drawings to express myself. And then later, actually, I took all those drawings and I made them into paintings that I had in my office for a number of years. And people really related to those paintings. And then I just kind of got back, I just kind of enjoyed the painting, and I use art in with my clients, and sometimes they do paintings, incredible things, and drawings as well. It's really amazing how that can help people they might not be able to find the words, but once they've done the painting or the drawing, and as we're talking about it, it's then through that process they begin to find the words to be able to say what they need to say. It's really cool.
Yes.
And I've done that with children and adults.
Oh, I'm sure the children's art is quite interesting to see what they come out and expressing themselves and stuff.
Well, actually, I did write a book that I have my paintings in.
Do you have a copy with you?
Um,
Don't worry about it. That's okay.
Okay.
We have a couple minutes left of this segment.
Okay.
I did want to ask you, were there other writings and books that you are working on?
Well, actually, I'm working on a series of novels that I want to write about women in history. But they'll be, it's kind of a made-up story about a woman who's had an accident, and as she's recovering from her accident, she starts having these flashbacks, but not of the accident, of women that she doesn't even know that are in different times. And so what we're going to find out is that she's having flashbacks from other past lives, and each book will be about the life of one of her lives and what that was like to be a woman in that time.
Cool. Historical fiction flashbacks and stuff, and that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
We're at the point of the end of this session. I kind of trip over my words there, but we will be right back after our sponsors do their thing.
Authors Marketing Guild is a membership-owned organization designed to help authors succeed and learn how to better market and sell themselves and their books. Join us at authorsmarketingguild.com and receive so many benefits you'll wonder why you didn't join sooner. That's authorsmarketingguild.com.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? I'm Charlotte Kenyon, award-winning author of the book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents. That was a question I had to ask myself some 16 years ago, and you'll have to ask the same question. I had a father-in-law with dementia, a mother with Alzheimer's, and a dad with Parkinson, all at the same time.
Thank you for watching or listening to Indie Beacon Radio. Our sponsor, IndieLector.store, is the only bookstore that pays authors their fair share for book sales. Help authors to succeed and enjoy a great book by supporting them at IndieLector.store. Enjoy a 10% discount with coupon code SHOPPER20 at IndieLector.store. Coupon valid until December 31st, 2020. That's IndieLector.store, coupon code SHOPPER20.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
And welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. This is your host, B. Alan Bourgeois, and I'm with Deborah Chelette-Wilson, who has written several books. And in the last segment, we were talking about a couple of books, one of them being a book that she has created with her artwork. Deborah, do you have that?
Yes, it's called The Art of the Healing Journey.
Okay. And it's all your artwork, correct?
It's the artwork that I did when I was going through my own therapeutic process. There's a couple. This is, on one side I have the drawing, this was the drawing, and then this is the painting I did. And then I explained what each one, meant to me. And then over the years, my clients look at the paintings, and then they have their own expression of what that meant to them.
Cool. And you have another book that you've written as well.
Yes, I've co-written this one with Ann Ridelfs, and this is called What the World Needs Now, Healing Trauma in Ourselves and Our Children.
And we definitely do need that.
Right, and we're doing workshops related to that as well. We'll be doing one here in Longview, January the 25th.
Right. So how can people learn about your book? I assume you have a website and learn about your different work events and the books and all that fun stuff.
Yes, it's boundlessfreedoms.com. It's BOUNDLESS, freedoms with an S.com is the website. And I'm also working on a website for the School of Soul. So we'll eventually have one specifically for that. But right now the information is on boundlessfreedoms.com.
And of course, your books are available at Indie Lecter and Amazon and where else?
I believe What the World Needs Now, we're kind of self-publishing those, so they could contact me for information on that particular book.
So your website has links and stuff.
Yes.
Okay. And if you're doing events and stuff, you have a calendar on your website as well, so people can see where you're going to be and
yes, there's sign-ups about the. We're also going to do one, I think, in the Fort Worth area in March, I believe. So we're gearing up already for this new 2020.
Yeah, new decade, a lot of new challenges for you.
Yeah.
So we have just a couple minutes left, and I'd like to ask, which I ask a lot of our authors, do you have any words of encouragement, advice, or anything about writing or getting published or anything?
Well, when it comes to writing, what I've learned is you just write. You just get your ideas down, because if you wait, they go away and you might not be able to get them back. So I just write, and when I decide I'm going to write a book, I just write it, and then after I get all the ideas out, then the hard work or the more entailed work is the editing. It's getting it to say how you want it to say, and kind of the nitpicky details is what I call it. I know when I wrote the book Sanctuary Found, a friend of mine who does my editing for me, we went to a cabin for a weekend and we read the book out loud. And as we read it out loud, we could hear whether it had a flow or whether something needed to be changed. And I think that's probably one of the best experiences that I had in doing that with her. I think it made the book really, really sing.
Yeah, I'm sure you can catch well, that didn't quite sound the way I wanted it to, and go back and edit and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and so by reading it out loud, we found it really helpful. Now, that may not work for somebody else, but that really worked for me. And I intend to do that, especially with my women's novels, because I really want to showcase the history of women and what's been left out.
I'm going to do a shameful plug here because you mentioned getting it out, writing it down and stuff. So recently I wrote a book called The Last Book About Donald Trump, which is not about him. It's actually about writing and reading and stuff. So it became a journal. If I understand correctly, from a therapeutic point of view, writing is very therapeutic. So even if you're not wanting to write a story, just journaling, is that correct? I mean, it can be very helpful for anybody?
Yes, because, well, if you think about it, when you write, and especially if you use, a pencil or a pen, writing is what we call a psychomotor activity, because you're getting your body involved in it. And so I've gone back to doing more writing with a pen and paper, and then later I'll put it, type it in to just get that expression out, to kind of find my voice. Because I think for so many people, given that we are a child developmentally illiterate society, we lose our voice in childhood. And I want to help everyone find their voice and find who they are and be able to be free to be that being that they were created to be.
Now, just to be clear for people who are either listening or watching, I am not a client of Deborah's, but what she has said is very true, because out of the 10 books I have published, 9 of them were written by hand first. And it is very therapeutic and very physical. Just to be sitting there for hours on end, just writing with a pen and paper and stuff. So I'm glad to see somebody else is going back to doing that. And yes, typing it in a computer is great too, especially after the fact, because you're seeing all the edits that need to be done and corrections and the flows and stuff. And as you mentioned earlier, reading it out loud is definitely a great way to catch some of that as well and stuff. So I'm really thrilled that you said that, and I hope other people follow that and stuff. So we are at the end of the show, but I do want to thank you for your time and patience. And we'll be watching to see the new book and also the Save the Souls, no, School of the Soul.
School of Soul, SOS.
Yeah.
Because that's what we, that's what we think that we're missing. You know, it's like we don't have enough soulfulness, and that's what's going to save us.
I'm going to have to agree with that. And so I encourage people to check it out. Go to her website. It is on our screen, so you can learn more about it. Thank you again, Deborah, for being with us, and enjoy.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website.
Indie Beacon Radio with the host, B. Alan Bourgeois.
Indie Beacon Radio is produced by B. Alan Bourgeois for Authors Marketing Guild LLC, copyright 2020. Voiceover by Randy James, Lydia Bello, and B. Alan Bourgeois. To be a sponsor of the show or for more information, please email us at info@authorsmarketingguild.com. To be interviewed for the show, please complete the form at radio.authorsmarketingguild.com. Music Always Rejoice by Ramcord.